Okay, it's still morning.
All right, I am just going to jump in and get started. Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ramien Pierre. I'm the Chief Learning Officer for Break the Norm Leadership. And today we're talking about the 4 A's for career success: ability, attitude, assignments, and alliances. And in recognition of Hispanic Heritage Month, I am pleased to be joined by two amazing leaders. First, I want to introduce you all to Tori Perez Shires. Tori is the Chief Development Officer at the Rescue Mission Alliance in Syracuse, New York, where she leads fundraising efforts, events, creative communications, and volunteer efforts for the nonprofit. She was also one of Central New York's 40 Under 40 back in 2021. Tori, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Excellent. We're also joined by Daniela Lockhart. Daniela is a senior learning and organizational development consultant at Applied Learning Science. They're a boutique firm specializing in science-based workforce and organizational development. Daniela conducts research on gender discrimination in leadership, contributes to anti-racist initiatives, and her work has been used to help explore anti-Blackness in Latino community. Daniela, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
All right, excellent. So let's get into the 4 A's for work success and career success. And Tori, I want to start with you. In order to be successful, at a minimum, you have to at least be competent, right? You have to have the skill to do the job. But many employees struggle to figure out what are the right skills or right skill sets that will help them be impactful and get ahead. For you, Tori, to what degree has ability played a significant role in your success at work?
So, what's really funny is in my current role now as Chief Development Officer, this was not something I originally intended to do, nor was it my original career path. So, after graduating from Syracuse University, I actually spent over 14 years selling beer. So, I worked in the beer industry and worked in sales. And it wasn't until a acquaintance of mine who had become the CEO of the rescue mission in 2017 reached out to me and said, "Hey, I like your skills that you have, your skills in sales and marketing, and I think that you could be an asset to our organization as a chief development officer." And I kind of looked at him first and did that exact thing you were talking about. I was like, I don't know anything about fundraising. I've never done this before. This is not my role. And he said, "No, just think about it." He goes, "There's a lot of parallels." He goes, "I like that you have the ability to, the for-profit experience." And so before I had my interview for the position, I really started to think about, how does this translate? Do I have these skills? Do I think I can do what I need? And I knew that part of my role would be managing a team. And so I said, okay, well, I have that. I know that I'm a good manager. I'm a good people manager. And then I thought about the actual role of fundraising and the skills that it would take. And I started to think, in my current job at the time, I said, I'm trying to sell beer onto the shelves of supermarkets, and I'm working with high-end grocery buyers. But in this case, I'm not selling a product, right? I'm not selling something tangible, but I am selling the mission. I'm selling the hope that we're bringing to our clients. And then I'm asking for our donors to buy that, right? That's the push that I was doing. And it was the angle that I had to start thinking of and start thinking a little bit outside the box and say, just because I didn't go to school for this, or just because this wasn't where my career started, doesn't mean that I'm not competent to do this job. And here I am 6 years later.
This is great. Tori, you said so much I want to dig into. Like, first, I really appreciate you saying, that you at first you had some doubts about whether or not you could do the job. And then it sounds like you made a pivot, that you stopped focusing on the title of the job, and then you broke it down into, what are the talents I need in order to do this job? Do I have that right?
Yes, that's exactly correct.
Yeah. And then it sounds like you were able to make parallels between the work you were already doing in the beverage industry and the talents you had there: sales, marketing, leading a team. And you saw how there were parallels to that in the new role. Yes?
Yes, that's 100% correct.
Yeah. And then it also sounds like you the product. Like with your first job, not necessarily your first job, your previous job, you were the product was beer.
Right.
Now the product was the mission, selling the mission.
Correct.
So they're both still products. One tangible and tasty that we can drink. The other impactful, changes the world, makes the earth better. But both are still products that you sold.
Yes. And it was just changing that mindset to say, it's not that I don't have these skills and I don't have this ability. It's just reframing that. And it took a minute for me to be able to reframe that and say, yes, I deserve to be in this role. I deserve to expand my career path. And you don't have to kind of pigeonhole yourself into one narrow industry.
Oh, that's amazing. And I commend you on being open to that reframing. And it sounds like it may have started with somebody like pointing out to you what they saw in you, but you bought into what they were selling and really embraced it.
Yeah, I would have never thought, right? If I had been unhappy, because I was happy in my role in the beverage industry. But if I was exploring opportunities there, it would always be within that same industry. I would have never thought to expand out to nonprofit. And so it did take someone else being able to see the abilities in me for me to start believing in that myself.
Oh, that's excellent. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing your one story just about how how you're able to translate your ability from one position to another by breaking it down and seeing the parallels. Daniela, I want to bring you into the conversation, and I want to bring you into the conversation to talk about the second A, attitude. So in addition to having the skills to be successful in a job or in a position or in a career, we at Break the Norm have seen how important mindset, emotional intelligence, all these things are to people being successful. To what degree, Daniela, has attitude played a significant role in your success at work?
Yeah, attitude I think is huge all the time, especially in the kind of work that I do. It's often fast-paced and has tight deadlines, and so the stress of that can lead you kind of to react poorly sometimes to unexpected problems, and you might be inclined to feel justified in the way you feel, especially if someone else is the person who's making a mistake. And I know I've encountered this before multiple times, but a few years ago I was working with someone, and I think at the time she was a lot younger and less experienced, and she made a mistake. She made a few mistakes and then a big mistake, and I initially was anxious and angry, but I knew that, like, in order to deal with this, I had to address it in a constructive way. And in order to do that, I needed to emotionally regulate. So I took that time, I let that steam off, went for a walk, worked on something else. And then I had like the mental capacity to have empathy and lay out a plan and how to approach her. And we were able to talk it out. And I learned that, she was struggling with asking for help and how that might signify incompetence, which it doesn't. But we were able to unpack that. And I would not be able to have that kind of conversation and build that kind of psychological safety without emotional intelligence and without having an attitude of okay, this maybe not right now, but could be a growth opportunity. Yeah.
Oh, this is great. And again, you're giving me so much here to unpack. One of the things I really loved, there's a word you used, regulate, about you had to regulate your own emotions. And for you, it sounds like at that moment, what you did was you gave yourself some space and some time. You went for a walk. You worked on something else. Did I hear that right?
Yes. Let some of that steam off. You have to address everything immediately.
Yeah, which is hard in a stressful, high pressure environment, right? Where things are fast paced. We're often trained to react immediately to stimulus that we receive. But it sounds like, at least in this case, reacting immediately might not have been the best thing.
Yeah. In that kind of environment, it might be your first instinct, but I think if you really want to prioritize relationship building and actually solving problems, you have to slow down sometimes and think about what really needs to be done.
Yeah.
And are you in a state to address this properly?
Yeah, I've heard the phrase, what's the phrase? Sometimes you have to slow down to speed up, take the time to
Yes.
regulate yourself, have the conversation in a constructive way so that you and your team can move faster going forward. Oh, that's amazing. Daniela, let me ask you this. Have there been times in your work career where you've had to bounce back from a setback or a challenge? What I'm really curious about is what do you do to help yourself be resilient? What's the self-talk that you use or the habits that you use to bounce back from challenges?
Yeah, I think emotional regulation plays into that again. Like, I want to acknowledge the feelings I have, but I also want to, be logical, be realistic. I only allow myself to express that so long, and then remind myself that I have a mission, and that is to learn and to grow from this opportunity, potential opportunity, hopefully. And so that kind of like stops myself from dwelling too much on what went wrong or what could go wrong, and moving on and moving forward, and making a plan. Trial and error is a big part of learning. So that's another kind of reminder I just give myself, like, if I'm not making mistakes, I'm not learning. Yeah, they're just opportunities. Maybe not immediately, but eventually they are opportunities.
I love how you talked about mission. And at Break the Norm, we've seen that time and time and again, that one way to not get stuck in the challenge, but get focused on like where we want to go is by reminding ourselves, where individuals remind themselves of, what am I really trying to do? Where am I really trying to go? Because inevitably, whatever our individual goals or missions are, it's not to be stuck in this challenge. And so let's not focus on this. Let's figure out a way to get back on track towards our plan. It sounds like you do that on a fairly regular basis.
Yes, I allow myself to feel my feelings. And then after a certain amount of time, I'm like, all right, we got to get back to the real world. Like, is this really that important for me to think about this for this long? I think I've gotten like all the lesson I could out of this. It's time to move on.
Yes, get the lesson and move on. I love that. And I love what you said about feeling your feelings. My therapist says this to me all the time, that no one ever dies from a feeling. I am not sure that's the case. I certainly sometimes feel like I'm going to die, but I hear you that it's important to make space for those feelings and to
Yeah.
have them without them having us. Don't let them take over. Don't give them, what's the other thing my therapist says? Let them in the car with you, but don't give them the wheel.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, they can't be driving.
No. Feelings are bad drivers. All right. Thank you, Daniela. And Tori, I want to come back to you for our third A, which is assignments. Now, the first two A's, ability and attitude, were things that an individual can almost entirely control. What skills they have, how they're going to react to things that happen to them. But time and time again, we at Break the Norm Leadership have seen how really successful employees, employees who make an impact, who have great careers, they tend to take high visibility assignments where there are objective measures for success that people can't argue about. To what degree have assignments played a significant role in your success at work?
So I guess I'll talk about two different spaces, like one where an assignment really succeeded and one where it failed, because I think both are relevant to the conversation and are important to address. And we'll piggyback on Daniela a little bit too. But, you know, moving along my career working in the beverage industry, I was in a relatively high role at a local brewery in New York, and a new national brewery was coming to launch New York State. And I saw the opportunity being that this is an organization, was a company I wanted to be a part of. And I was willing to take on a lesser role in that organization in order to think of long-term advancement. And so as part of my role, I had to launch New York State for this brewery. And that included setting up launch events and making sure beer's on shelves and in distributors, and working directly with all of those key partners across multiple platforms and multiple spaces in literally the expanse of everything from Westchester County to Buffalo, which is this giant space of a state. And this was, 10 years ago, but I did it well and was able to have at the time the VP of the company see me kind of managing this launch. And it brought a lot of attention to me and helped within the next year. So within a 12-month span, I was able to move from just being the state manager to a national level director role. That was more in line with my previous experience. And so it was kind of a couple things, which was one, to not be afraid to take that lesser role if you know it may lead to something bigger. But two was that it also helped me show that I'm willing to put in the work, and that, my commitment to the company was stronger. And then I was able to take on that national director role with direct reports, and then move back into a space that I felt more comfortable in professionally. So that's kind of that high visibility space. But then on the flip side, in this role, I've loved to take challenges. So I'd love to say, hey, just because this is what we've always done doesn't mean it's what we always should do. And so there was a time where I spent a significant amount of money to do what we called an email acquisition appeal, where we reached out and sent like a blind email to lots of addresses in hopes that they would become donors, and probably spent $10,000. Like it was a strong marketing campaign, and then received $0 in donations. So that was a struggle. And the biggest takeaway I got from that was, when I debriefed it, I just owned it. I said, hey, this was something we tried and it didn't work. Do I regret trying it? No, but now I know to learn from it. And that's happened time and time again in scenarios where if you have an assignment and it fails, the biggest recommendation I have is own it, right? Own that failure, learn from it, because it's going to give you respect. People will respect you for owning your flaws. I'm never here to make excuses. So on whatever assignment we have, I'm never here to make excuses, and I'm never here to own someone else's work. So uplift the people around you who make these assignments successful, and also own the failures. And me as a leader, if my team member makes the failure, I'm owning it for the team because it's my team. So I don't know, that's kind of the spaces I feel like in that assignment category on the A.
Oh, this is great. Let me talk. Actually, let's start with the I'll put it in quotes, the failure.
Sure.
The email acquisition appeal. It didn't turn out the way you wanted to, but I love your takeaway from it, that doing two things: owning it first, and then learning from the experience. And I assume that you also shared what you learned with those in your organization. Yes.
Oh yeah, both those in my organization and the marketing partner we worked with. So,
Mhm.
the following year they come back and they're like, oh, do you want to do another email campaign? And I have to like say, no, don't you remember this was not a success? And so then work with that partner and say, what else can we try? Is there something more successful we've done in the past? And again, never be afraid to try and do something new or be out of the box, because we're still trying new things, but accepting that sometimes these things aren't going to work.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Tori. It's a little bit off script, but admitting that you made a mistake. There are many leaders of color and female leaders of color who are in the difficult position of, if they feel as if they admit that they made a mistake or admit that things didn't go as planned, that they're afraid that they're going to be forever with a cloud over their head, that people will never take them seriously ever again. And whether that's an actual threat or just self-talk in our head, it's still very real. How did you manage, or I shouldn't assume, did you have any of those feelings as you were owning the unsuccessful campaign, and how did you manage those feelings if you had them?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a type 1 people pleaser, right? I am an overachiever. I am a perfectionist. So that also I own, and I also recognize that about myself. And so my thing is to not just come and say like, this failed, is to say, this failed. This is why it failed. This is what we're going to do differently in the future. And so I've always come in with that plan, which is to say, if I fail something, I'm going to own it, but I'm also going to show the response to it is that of learning, is that of leadership, so that no one can question my ability. Going back to the A, no one's going to question my ability or my judgment for the future, because they're going to understand that. But it is something that happens. And, that feeling is there for so many of us, women of color, who are in these leadership roles. And it's really also being able to have that confidence to stand up and say, this is the reality. And then to prove it the next time around. And then do better, right? Do better. That's it.
I love how both you and Daniela are one theme that I'm hearing from both of your responses is this idea of learning, that you both have a learner's or growth mindset going on, and that seems to be able to help you bounce back when things don't go quite well, but also really keeps you focused on what's working. Like with the acquisition campaign, you may not have learned what worked, but you definitely learned what didn't work.
Correct.
All right, thank you so much. Danielle, I want to come back to you for our last of the 4 A's. And the last of the 4 A's is alliances. What we have seen at Break the Norm Leadership is that successful leaders, successful employees have strong networks within their organization as well as external to their organization, maybe even across different industries. To what degree have alliances been a part of your success at work?
Oh, humongous. They've brought me so many professional development opportunities. I've developed meaningful friendships, expanded my personal support system. They mean the world to me. Yeah, I know in the past I've worked on projects where I had a small team and I just knew that we needed like more power. And, I knew people from different industries who could speak to what we were working on, and also, contribute that power. And I was so grateful for that opportunity. And from that, I was able to develop more meaningful relationships inside of work too, anywhere really, but inside of work, I know I have found one of my favorite people to work with just by reaching out to someone who I never really directly worked with when I was working on a big project and I wanted to just take the quality to the next level. And instead of giving up on my vision, just trying to brainstorm and, see how can we make it work. And usually it's through teamwork. So yeah, reaching out and through that partnership, we have found like the best synergy. She just happens to have a lot of the strengths that I don't have and vice versa. And we still continue to work together today on projects inside and outside of the workplace. And yeah, so it brings a sense of comfort. And I think when you are tackling something that might be intimidating, to be able to kind of relax and know that people and to also not think so quickly that like I have to do this on my own, because why not work smarter, not harder? Why not be
Absolutely.
more efficient if you can,
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Let me underline one thing that you said, then I want to make sure that I unpack something that I thought might have gotten buried a little bit in what you said. I love and want to underline, double click, whatever, highlight. You don't have to do it all. There's very little work in this world that can be done by one individual. Like as you said earlier, it takes a team to get most things done.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of that phrase, your net worth is directly related to the power of your network, that the people and skill sets that you can bring to bear are part of your value for any organization. But you said something else when you were talking about your network. You were talking about one particular person in particular who had a different set of skills than you, and I think that's a really important thing I want to make sure we underline here, that you don't necessarily, it sounds like you don't necessarily need to have a network of people who are carbon copies of you. In fact, that might not be in your best interest, but people with a diverse set of skills and talents means that you then have those diverse skills and talents. Did I hear that right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like I always am pro like developing yourself, developing your skill set. I would love to develop all those skills that I didn't have ready for that one project. I would love to do it in a short period of time. But realistically, like it's not always going to be feasible. Also, like it's just not, it's not good on time. But in collaborating with people who are different from me, I can also take that opportunity to just like shine on what I'm really strong at. And we're just so much more efficient working together. And Yeah, and it does take, you know, being open to collaboration, and being open to feedback. It's not something that is, you know, it is something that you have to have that skill set. You have to be open to being corrected or provided, you know, better ideas. But I think once you kind of break that down, that internal boundary that you might have, it just opens so many doors, and the world is your oyster.
Oh yeah, these are gems, because what you're talking about is strengths-based leadership, that you're doing what you're good at, other people in your team or your network are doing what they're good at. Everyone's operating in their zone of genius or their zone of excellence. It makes it so much more efficient. I just said it. I'm sorry, I just echoed what you said. Ditto, ditto. Um, Daniela and Tori, I have one more question for each of you, but before I ask it, I want to have a brief conversation with Rachel Sadoff, who's the founder of Break the Norm Leadership. I just want to bring her on for a moment, and then I'll come back to you with the final question, which is, what advice would you give a younger version of yourself, a more novice version of yourself, pardon. But Rachel, thanks for joining us, from coming out behind the camera. You've been great at producing things. So in a second, I'm going to ask you to take yourself off mute, because I want folks to hear a little bit about what's coming up for Break the Norm Leadership. Break the Norm has been operating since 2016, providing leadership and life skills training for adults, for educators, for youth. But I really want to hear, what upcoming Break the Norm Leadership projects you're really excited about?
Awesome. Yeah. So we have a lot of really fun things coming up. For starters, we just launched the Lunch and Learn series, which you guys are watching right now, and those will be happening monthly. Our next one is October 18th, and that will be focusing all on communication. It's called Lost in Transmission. 15 minutes into a presentation, somebody asked if I had started. And so that is going to be really jumping through obstacles and challenges of communication on Teams, or if you're in a keynote or doing a Lunch and Learn series like this, how can we be more effective about our communication? The other one that we're super, super excited about is our organizational development certification that we're starting. And essentially that's like going to grad school without having to go to grad school. People are, once you register and are part of the certificate program, you will have 3 months where you are taught by grad school professors from a variety of different schools, George Washington University being one of them, where they are going to be teaching you a variety of different OD consulting skills that you can take back into your work, or if you're wanting to do it in your organization, or if you're wanting to consult, it's a great time for you to practice and learn from these awesome professionals, while also getting to support a nonprofit and working on an OD project while participating in the learning program. So it's going to be super, super fun. You can, for more details in the flyer on that, you can go to breakthenormleadership.com/OD. So lots of fun things in the queue.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. So folks, check out Break the Norm Leadership for both the Lunch and Learn series and the OD certification program. Rachel, I'm going to say goodbye to you for a moment. I'll ask my last question to Tori and Daniela, and then we'll wrap up for today. So Tori and Daniela, we've talked about the 4 A's, and you've each given examples about how they have been instrumental in your career. So ability, attitude, assignments, and alliances. Here's the question. If you could go back in time to a more novice version of yourself and give yourself any advice about the 4 A's, I wonder what you would tell yourself and why. Who would like to go first?
I'll go. I guess the first would be, I mentioned it earlier as we were talking about abilities, but it wasn't something I learned until a lot later, which is, one, have confidence in yourself, right? If you know what you're good at, have confidence in that. And also don't let imposter syndrome take over, right? Don't tell yourself, this is not me, I can't do it, because who knows? Nobody knows. And so I tell it to people all the time, fake it till you make it, right? If you know you have those abilities, you will get there, and have confidence that you can. And so don't be afraid to switch from the beverage industry to nonprofit. But then the last piece I'll have, which is something that I've done well and that I've learned, is have patience right? I think when I was a lot younger, I wanted that next opportunity because I had a lot of ambition. And so it was, okay, well, when can I get that next promotion? When can I do this? And there's a lot of things in companies that go behind that, which is, budgets and roles and development, and, have frank conversations about where your career trajectory is, but have patience with that. Cause a lot of times I didn't. And not a lot of times, but at least a few times where I left jobs and companies where maybe I could have been way higher up and my whole career would have been different. But on the flip side also, and I've been able to do this pretty successfully, analyze the opportunities. That's my 5th A for you, analyze, which is know that the opportunities that are coming your way, make sure it's a good one. So just because someone might promise you a bigger title or more money does not mean it is the right move, right? Take a look at the company. Is the company stable? What are the growth opportunities there? Is this the right fit for you and your work-life balance or your personal situation at that time? So those would be sort of the things I would tell younger me that I look back at and I'm like, these are the things I needed to know that I know now. Some I learned from, some I didn't at the time, but definitely want to impart that little bit of knowledge.
Oh, Tori, thank you so much. I'll spare everyone my imposter syndrome lecture for right now, but maybe that's a future lunch and learn. I really appreciate all of that, including the 5th A, analyze. We'll have to figure out how to weave that into the next time we talk about these topics. Thank you so much. Daniela, what advice would you give a younger version of yourself about the 4 A's?
Yeah, and I just want to say I love all of that, Tori. My grandfather had a saying that was basically something like, the opportunities are there for like those who go to get it. And so I'm constantly talking to myself in that way. But yeah, to add on to what Tori said, I would also just remind yourself to treat other people well, treat the people you are working over well. Everyone goes through hard things. Challenges and mistakes are to be expected. What matters is how you react to those things. But also those relationships can become alliances, if they turn out well. That one employee that I mentioned before in the past who I had a talk with, she helped me later on in a few ways. And I don't think it's possible that would not have happened if I had reacted with my first instincts. And then of course, network, but in addition to that, building off of what Tori said, push through that imposter syndrome, find and create opportunities for yourself. Don't wait for them. And also ask for what you need from people.
Mm-hmm.
That took me such a long time to learn that you can just ask people. And the worst that they can say is no. And of course, if you are doing it in a polite way, in a professional way, and you're giving back, like that's how the world should work. Yeah, great points, Tori.
I just need to say 100% on that. There are so many people, and especially young women and young women of color, who take that first offer they are given. So ask for what you need. And that is like a uniquely woman thing, but like ask for it. That's I wish I said that one. That's really good. Ask for it.
I'll go back in the edit and fix that for you. No worries. Ask for what you need.
No, it's hers. It's hers. I'm not owning it. It's hers. That's her statement, but it's such a good one. And it's such an important one. It's such an important one, especially to tell the younger version of yourself and the novice version of yourself. Coming out of college, your first or second job, ask for what you need. Ask for it.
I love this.
Yes.
Tori and Daniela, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for sharing your wisdom and your experience around these 4 A's. And for all of you who are joining us, I hope that we've earned the privilege of your time and attention. Come back for our next Lunch and Learn, which is going to be on October 18th, where we're discussing true story, lost in transmission. 15 minutes into a presentation, someone asked if I had even started. So we'll be talking about communications, lessons learned from a horrible failure. But until then, please take care.